Somewhere in your kitchen right now, there's a banana peel headed for the trash, and you're about to throw away one of the best things that ever happened to a tomato plant. If you've spent any time on gardening videos, you know the trick going around. Drop the peel in a jar of water, let it sit overnight, pour the brown water on your plants. Here's what nobody tells you. The part your tomatoes are desperate for barely makes it into that water. It's still locked inside the peel you tossed out. And once you know how to get it out, along with two other things sitting in your trash, this very minute, you can grow the kind of harvest that has you hauling baskets in with both arms. The kind where the branches bow under the weight, where the neighbors lean over the fence asking what on earth you did differently this year. 3 scraps. No store, no spending, nothing you don't already have. Stay with me, because the whole thing was hiding in your kitchen the entire time. Start with the banana peel, because it's the one everybody's heard about, and the one almost everybody wastes. What's inside it is real. A banana peel is loaded with potassium, one of the 3 nutrients a fruiting plant leans on the hardest. And potassium is the one you can taste. It's what drives even ripening. Fruit that colors up deep and full, top to bottom, with no hard pale shoulder near the stem. It's what pushes sugars into the tomato, so it comes off the vine heavy in your hand and tastes like the tomato you grew up on, not the pale, mealy thing trucked into the store. This isn't garden folklore. Horticulturists at the University of Maryland Extension tie those ugly yellow shoulders and blotchy, uneven fruit straight to a plant starving for potassium right when it's trying to ripen. So the instinct behind the banana peel is dead on. Your fruit is hungry for exactly what's in that peel. Picture the 2 plants side by side. One sets fruit that ripens patchy, green and hard up top, going soft at the bottom before it's ever ready. The other sets fruit that colors deep and even all the way down, firm and glossy and sweet in your hand. Same seed, same sun, same summer. The only real difference is whether the plant had the potassium it was crying out for when it mattered most. So why do so many people get nothing from it? Because of that jar of water. Drop a whole peel into cold water overnight, and almost none of the potassium comes out. It stays locked in the peel, and you end up pouring a glass of faintly sweet water on the ground while you throw the real prize in the trash. Linda Chalker-Scott, a horticulturist at Washington State University who has spent years testing these claims against the hard research, says it plainly. The potassium in a banana peel is released slowly as the peel breaks down. A few hours in a jar breaks down nothing. And this is the move almost every video online skips. The exact reason their brown water does nothing, while the gardeners who know better pull ahead. You don't soak the peel, you break it down. And you can do it 2 ways, one fast and one lasting, and you want both of them working for you. The fast lane is for when a plant is already flashing those yellow shoulders and you want an answer this week. The quickest way into a plant isn't through the soil at all, it's through the leaves. A soluble potassium feed, misted right onto the foliage, gets pulled in far faster than anything you pour on the ground, because a leaf drinks a dissolved nutrient in almost at once while the roots are still working slowly down below. That's your same-week rescue. And that leaf feed is about as simple as gardening gets. Mix a soluble potassium feed to the strength on the label, pour it into a clean spray bottle, and mist the leaves in the cool of early morning or evening. Never in the middle of a hot day. Do that once a week while the fruit is filling out, and you're feeding the plant by the fastest road there is. The lasting lane is the peel itself. And this is where the real, year-after-year payoff lives, the moment you stop soaking it and start breaking it down. There's one simple move that speeds everything up. Cut the peel small before it ever touches your soil, or better yet, dry it and crush it into flakes. The smaller you make it, the more surface you've opened up, and the faster the life in your soil tears it apart and hands that potassium to your roots. A whole peel buried in July can still be lying there in September. That same peel, chopped fine or dried and crushed, vanishes in a fraction of the time. Same peel, same power, completely different speed. Want the fastest head start of all? Lay your peels on a tray in a warm, dry spot. A sunny windowsill, or a barely warm oven with the door cracked, until they turn dark and brittle, then crumble them into flakes. Keep a jar of that dark powder on the shelf, and you've got concentrated potassium ready the moment a plant asks for it. That's the real secret of the banana peel. Not a jar of water, but free, Concentrated fuel for the very thing that decides how your fruit ripens and how it tastes. Break it down, keep flakes on hand, and hit a struggling plant through the leaves, and you've already left every brown water gardener behind, and the peel is only the first scrap. There's a second one, sitting right by your coffee pot, doing a job the peel simply can't. Coffee grounds. You brew a pot, you dump them, and you've heard they're good for the garden. But used the right way they do far more than good, and used the wrong way they'll quietly stall everything you plant. Let me show you the line between the two, because it's a thin one. Here's the good in them. Used coffee grounds carry real nitrogen, around 10% of their weight straight out of the filter. Nitrogen is the engine of green growth, the nutrient that builds the big, leafy, sturdy plant that can actually carry a heavy load of fruit. A weak, spindly plant can't hold a harvest. Nitrogen is how you get the frame that can. And there's more. The grounds are soft and spongy, and worked into your soil they grab hold of water and won't let it drain straight through. Hold on to that, because in a few minutes, moisture is going to turn out to be the quiet hero that saves your whole crop from the ugliest problem a tomato grower ever faces. Now the part that surprises everyone. And this one is backed by real science, not a hunch. In a 2023 study in the journal Agriculture, researchers found that coffee grounds, once they'd aged, cut down slug damage while helping radishes and tomatoes grow stronger. If you've ever walked out at dawn to find your seedlings chewed to lace overnight, you know exactly what that's worth, and you can see the difference in days. But here's the catch that trips up half the people who try it. And once you know it, you'll never be one of them. Fresh grounds, dumped thick around a young plant, can actually hold it back. The same kick that wakes you up in the morning can stall a tender seedling and choke off its new roots. That's why one neighbor swears coffee grounds transformed her garden while another swears they killed his lettuce. And both of them are telling the truth. The whole difference is age and amount, and now you're on the right side of it. Let me clear one myth while we're here, because it sends people wrong. You've heard coffee grounds acidify your soil, great for blueberries. The truth is, once they're spent, most of that acid has already gone into your cup. Tested grounds come out close to neutral. So don't use them to sour soil. Use them as a feeder and a mulch, which is where they truly shine. Using them right is easy. Dry and age your grounds first. Spread them on an old baking sheet for a few days, or just toss them in the compost and forget them a while. Then a light hand. A thin scattering worked into the surface, never a thick wet mat packed against the stem. There's one more thing those grounds do that you'll never see, but your plants will feel. They wake the soil up. Earthworms come for them, and wherever the worms travel, they leave tunnels that let air and water reach the roots, plus castings that feed the plant all on their own. A handful of grounds is really an invitation to the whole underground crew that does your heaviest work for free. Handled that way, they feed slow nitrogen, hold your moisture, pull earthworms up close, and keep the slugs off your seedlings. All from what you were about to rinse down the drain. 2 scraps now, one for ripening and flavor, one for green growth and keeping the pests off. And now the third. The one that rescues the fruit you've already sweated over for weeks. Eggshells. You crack a couple for breakfast, you toss the shells, and you've probably heard they stop blossom end rot. That black, sunken, heartbreaking patch that spreads across the bottom of a tomato right as it's about to ripen. Peppers get it too. And there's almost nothing crueler in a garden than losing a fruit you've babied for weeks, right at the finish line. The shell holds part of the answer. An eggshell is almost pure calcium, and calcium is exactly what a tomato needs to build firm, sound walls in its fruit. Starve the fruit of calcium, and the cells at the blossom end collapse, and there's your rot. So people are right to reach for the shells. But there's a twist here that will change the way you garden for good. The University of Minnesota Extension and Mississippi State University Extension have been trying to get this across for years. Most of the time, blossom end rot is not your soil running out of calcium. It's the calcium failing to travel. And the thing that carries calcium up into the fruit is water. Steady, even water. When your soil swings from bone dry to soaked and back again, the plant simply cannot move calcium into the fruit, no matter how much is sitting in the ground beneath it. That's the real reason rot strikes in a hot, dry, on-again, off-again stretch of summer. And it's why the gardener next door can dump in all the eggshells he wants and still lose half his crop, While you won't. Because here's the fix, and it's faster and simpler than any powder. Even moisture. Water deep and water steady. A single tomato plant in the summer heat can drink 2 or 3 gallons in a week, and it wants that water arriving like clockwork, not in a flood followed by a drought. Get that one thing right and you stop the rot before it ever starts. And this is the moment your coffee grounds and your mulch quietly save the day. That spongy layer holding moisture in the soil is doing more to stop blossom end rot than anything you could buy off a shelf. The scraps are already working together, and you're barely getting started. And making that happen is easier than it sounds. Lay 2 or 3 inches of mulch over the root zone. Straw, shredded leaves, even those aged coffee grounds worked in. And it holds the moisture in the ground steady between waterings, so the plant never lurches from flood to drought. Water long and slow at the base a couple of times a week. Skip the daily surface sprinkle that never soaks in, and you've built the even supply that keeps calcium moving and rot away. So where do the shells fit? They're your long game, your calcium bank. Crushed fine. And it has to be fine, because a shell tossed in whole can still be sitting there a full year later. They steadily feed calcium and a little structure into your soil, season after season. Dry them. Grind them close to a powder, work them into the bed at planting, and next year's roots draw on a reserve you built for nothing. So now every piece is in your hands. Potassium for ripening, nitrogen for growth, calcium and steady water for sound, unblemished fruit. 3 things headed for the trash this morning, and together they cover almost everything a tomato or a pepper begs for all season long. But knowing what they do is only half of it. The real power is in how you make them work together and how you make them work fast. And that's exactly what I've put on one page for you. Every ratio, every bit of timing, the mistakes that trip people up, and a feeding calendar that runs from planting to harvest. The whole method, pulled into a single guide you can print out and pin right by the shed door. Just point your phone's camera at the code on your screen, and it's yours. No charge, no sign-up, no email to hand over. A gift, plain and simple. Go ahead and grab it now, while it's right there in front of you. Then come straight back. Because this next part is where it all comes together. Where 3 scraps stop being 3 separate tricks and turn into the reason your beds outgrow every other garden on the street. Think about what a tomato or a pepper actually asks of you across a whole season. Early on, it wants nitrogen to build a big, green plant. As the flowers turn to fruit, it wants potassium, so that fruit sets, colors deep, and tastes like something worth growing. And the whole way through, it wants calcium and steady water, so nothing rots at the bottom. Nitrogen, potassium, calcium. Growth, ripening, sound fruit. Now look at what's in your hands. Coffee grounds bring the nitrogen. Banana peels bring the potassium. Eggshells bring the calcium. The 3 things you carried out to the trash this morning line up, almost perfectly, with the exact trio a fruiting plant craves the most. That's no accident, and it's no secret anyone is guarding. The parts of our food we don't eat are simply rich in the minerals that plants are built from. There's just no money in telling you the answer's already in your bin. That's not a conspiracy. It's plain economics. And it's exactly why you're hearing it here instead of in a fertilizer ad. Now the one honest catch, and it's the thing that turns a pile of scraps into a real harvest. On their own, buried whole, all 3 release slowly. They're next season's gift more than this season's. So here is how you speed them up and put them to work right now. First, make everything small. Chop the peels, crush the shells toward a powder, and keep the grounds fine and spread thin. Small means fast. The University of Minnesota Extension puts it plainly. The finer you break these materials down, the sooner your soil can use them. Big pieces just sit there. Small pieces feed. Second, let them break down before your plant is waiting on them. The surest way is the oldest way there is. A simple compost pile or a small worm bin in a corner of the yard. Feed it your peels, your grounds, and your crushed shells all year, and by spring you've turned 3 slow scraps into dark, crumbly compost your plants can eat the very day you spread it. And don't let the word compost scare you if you've never kept one. A worm bin can be as plain as a lidded tub tucked under the porch, and it's forgiving, easy work. In one study out of the United Arab Emirates, worm-worked compost beat every other kitchen scrap method for growing radishes. The worms do the slow work for you, and they do it far better than a jar of water ever could. And peppers, by the way, want the very same trio as tomatoes. So everything here feeds both beds at once. Third, feed on the plant's clock, not yours. Work your finished compost and crushed shells into the bed before you ever set a plant in it, so the calcium and the slow potassium are already banked and waiting. Then, once the fruit sets and the plant is drinking hard in the heat, you reach for the fast tools. Deep, even watering, a moisture-holding mulch over the roots, and the second you spot a yellow shoulder, a quick potassium feed through the leaves to answer it that same week. If you want a dead simple place to start, here it is. Into each planting hole, work a good handful of finished compost, a couple of tablespoons of crushed eggshell, and a thin scattering of aged coffee grounds. Then set your plant. Through the season, keep dropping chopped peels and grounds into your compost or worm bin for next year, mulch to hold the moisture, and feed the leaves the moment a plant flashes those pale shoulders. That's the whole program, start to finish, and it costs you nothing you weren't already throwing away. That's the whole system. The scraps build your foundation over months. The water and the leaf feed win the moment. Put them together and you're not chasing one lucky ingredient. You're handing a tomato plant every single thing it has quietly been begging you for out of what was already headed for the bin. That is how you grow the beds the whole street notices. Do that, and by the heart of summer, you're not fighting your garden anymore. You're keeping up with it. Bowls of firm, deep-colored fruit crowding the counter, peppers thick-walled and glossy, more coming in than you quite know what to do with. That is what it looks like when a plant finally gets everything it's been asking you for. And that is the old gardener's secret hiding under a loud title. It was never a trick, and it was never a trip to the store. It's a habit. The growers who haul in basket after basket of heavy, even unblemished fruit, year after year, are simply the ones who got in the habit of handing the soil back what came out of it, and then letting a little time do the rest. A garden this generous doesn't ask for much you don't already have within arm's reach. It asks for a little attention, a little patience, and the eyes to look at 3 scraps on your counter and see the beginning of something instead of the end of it. Give your soil back what your kitchen was about to waste. Give it steadily and give it time. And season after season, it has a quiet way of handing you back far more than you ever put in.